All right, well, let's get started this evening. Thank you so much to those of you who've come tonight in person, and thanks to those of you who've joined us online as well. Let's deal with the big question, I guess, before we start. I have had numerous people tell me since we've returned from Israel that they think we were crazy to go in the first place. So the question is why? Why would we go to a place that at least part of the country is currently a war zone? And we weren't near that, but why would we do that? And I'm going to suggest there are two reasons that kind of guided our decision making. The first is just general missional importance for what we do at ABR through our excavation at Shiloh, Israel. ABR is an apologetics ministry, and we are dedicated demonstrating the historical reliability of the Bible through archaeological and biblical research. And to my knowledge, we are one of the only, if not the only, apologetics ministry that is currently leading a dig, overseeing a dig in Israel. There are other schools, Christian universities that do, for sure, and there are some fine evangelical archaeologists who are leading digs over there. But in terms of an apologetics ministry, we are one of the only, if not the only, that's doing that. And our goal at Shiloh is to investigate a number of things. One would be the location of the tabernacle, because the tabernacle was there for 300 years. We're looking for evidence of the biblical sacrificial system, and we're trying to understand the daily life in Israel at the time of the conquest. That would be late Bronze Age 1 or 2, depending on where you place it, what your chronology is, and also the period of the Judges, which would be the early Iron Age 1. And so that's what we're looking at. Now, we want to understand the history of the entire site. And the entire site goes from the Middle Bronze Age right through to, we were finding the first year we were there, we found a beautiful piece of Islamic pottery. And so the site was occupied on and off for thousands of years. And so we want to understand that better. But our focus at ABR is primarily the Exodus conquest time frame in Scripture and the archaeology that goes to that. So what we're doing is really important from a missional point of view. And if you know me, you know that this is probably not surprising. I'm thrilled that Island Bible Chapel supports someone like Kirk Durston, who's an apologist. We partner with Bethel Bible Chapel in the Sioux to run the Ready Answers Apologetics Ministry. We think that apologetics is a really important ministry that goes hand in hand with evangelism. So general missional importance was the first one. And the second one just has to do with personal educational importance. This is part of a master's degree I'm doing. This fulfilled the final 2 weeks that I had to do for an excavation practicum. And so I've told people that I would not have gone there if I did not feel that it was safe. ABR took a number of extraordinary steps to ensure our safety while we were there. We had someone who our assistant dig director lived in Jerusalem, in the old city of Jerusalem, was there through the entire, through part of the war anyways. She actually was out of the country when it first started. And so she was able to tell us exactly what was happening on the ground. We hired a team of security experts to come in before we ran the dig to investigate whether it was safe. These are the people, the way it was described was, these are the people, if you ever were kidnapped in a foreign country, these are the people you call. These are the ex-military people who will get you out, whether by negotiation or by extraction. And so they came in, they looked at our hotel, they looked at our route, they looked at our dig site, and they gave the green light that we had taken necessary precautions. One of them was we didn't post anything to Facebook. You would notice that for the most part, I was off social media for the 2 weeks I was over there, and then I didn't post anything until the dig was officially over. Then I was able to start posting pictures to Facebook. So we took some important steps to be safe, and you'll see some other ones as we go. So that's why I chose to go, and I was really glad that my wife was able to join me. And so we went to Shiloh, Israel. A little bit about the site, just so you know. Shiloh is located north of Jerusalem. It's about a 40-minute drive for us. It was first settled in the Middle Bronze Age, about 1750-ish, as far as we can tell. and it was settled by the Amorites. Now, they came into the region of Canaan. So the question becomes, what's the difference between a Canaanite and an Amorite? Well, the Bible says that the Amorites lived in the hill country and the Canaanites lived on the plains. And because Shiloh is in the central highlands, the hill country, we believe that it was settled by the Amorites then. They were the ones who built the town wall. We, of course, are focused on the time frame from about 1400 BC in the late Bronze Age. When Joshua comes in, the conquest happens, they allot the territories from Shiloh, and they set up the tabernacle there. And it's set up there for 300 years. It becomes the center of Israelite worship. In essence, it was the first capital of Israel, we might say. And it was there right up until those famous stories we read in 1 Samuel about Eli and Samuel being there. And then it is destroyed at some point in this time frame. We believe that it was the Philistines. We believe that for a number of reasons, and we can talk about that as we go. One of the main reasons is that the Ark of the Covenant, you remember that story where they go out to battle the Philistines and they take the Ark of the Covenant, and the Philistines win. They capture the Ark of the Covenant, and what proceeds is this: we don't want it, you take it. We don't want it, you take it, as they pass it around from city to city because God curses them, and they continue to get these tumors, and they finally send it back to the Israelites. But when they get the Ark of the Covenant back, they don't take it to Shiloh. They take it to Kiriath Jearim. That's very interesting. And Shiloh is destroyed. We know that because destruction layers have been found all across the site by every major excavation. The Danish 100 years ago, the Israeli team that dug there in the 80s, our team has found destruction layers there that all date to this time frame, the time frame of this particular battle. So we believe it was the Philistines that destroyed it. So that's a little bit about Shiloh. This is what our schedule looked like every day, just so you know kind of what we did. We got up at 3:45 every morning. That was our wake-up call. We went down for breakfast at 4:15 because the bus left at 4:59 sharp. 4:59, you had to be on the bus ready to go, which gets us out to Shiloh in time for sunrise and time to work. We work for a number of hours. We have lunch. 1:30, we shut down the dig and we start going to pottery washing, and then we leave Shiloh about 2. At 3 o'clock, we do our object reading. When we get back, those who are on dig staff, we go to the object room, the war room, and that's where they read the objects. I should maybe just clarify, just so you know, I'm using some terms and I want to be careful to make sure I'm not losing anyone. So pottery washing is where you take the pottery sherds that you find and you wash them because they've been in the dirt. And sometimes, as you'll see shortly, when you wash them gently with water, you see that, at least from one of our areas, area D, they're painted, because in the late Bronze Age, they started decorating the pottery. And so we see that there. So that's the pottery. An object is basically anything else that's an artifact, but not a piece of pottery. So it could be something made out of stone. Could be, I found a sling stone. It's about the size of a billiard ball. And so that would be an object. Anything metal would be an object. Glass, Roman glass from 2,000 years ago, that would be an object. And so there are lots of things considered objects. We do the washing on site. The objects we did about once a week, once we got permission to bring them back, because Shiloh is in an area that historically we would call Samaria, Judea. The modern term people use is West Bank. The technical term is Area C, if you know anything about how the West Bank is divvied up. And so we want to be careful. We've got all our I's dotted and T's crossed in terms of bringing artifacts out of that area and back into Israel proper. And so we did that once a week. Every morning when we drove, this was our drive through the central highlands, the hill country. If you read some of those terms, the Judean foothills or the hill country, this is our drive every day as we went in and went out. And when we got to Shiloh, we would park at the south end right over here, and then we would have this walk along the path to get to the north end, because ABR is leading the excavations on the north end of the tell. And so we were digging in a place called Area H. the first week, and then the second week, we were digging in an area called Area D. And I'm going to explain what those are in just a few minutes. But the first thing I want to do is I want to just point out this line that I've drawn on this picture. This line traces the line of the Middle Bronze Age fortification wall. This is the ancient stone city wall. And I've highlighted it because you're going to see that same wall from a couple different angles over the next few pictures. And I wanted to give you a point of reference. I look at this and I know what I'm looking at, but for someone who wasn't there, they don't quite know what they're looking at. I'm trying to help with that. And so this is the city fortification. We're on the north end of the tell now. We're looking back towards the south. And all of these remains, by the way, that you can see in this picture, were underground when we started 6 years ago. We have moved 7, 8, 9 meters of dirt. We've come down. We've exposed to the fortification system. We have found the rooms on the inside of the city wall, and we found some other things that we will talk about in just a minute. If we go here, now we've flipped around. We're kind of from above looking north, but there's that fortification wall again, right? So if we go back again, just to take a quick look, there's the fortification wall looking towards the south. There it is looking towards the north. And this was the one area H, that we were digging in. And one of the really important parts of Area H, one of the things that we found, and I'm just going to trace it first of all with the laser pointer so you can see, is as we started excavating there over the last number of years, a large monumental structure began to come out. You can see it right here. Here's one of the walls. It goes down here. It goes out. This wall here, you can see it continues right here and over here to the corner. And so if we take a look at it, it would look like this. And what's very interesting is that this particular area is exactly 2/3 this particular area. That's really interesting. And it faces east-west. And that's really interesting. All of this is really interesting because these dimensions, by the way, not only is it 1/3, 2/3, not only does it face east-west, but it also has the same dimensions as the tabernacle. And that's very interesting. Now, when you go to Shiloh, the big question has been, where is the tabernacle? Where was it located? And some people thought it was on the top of the tell, didn't find anything there. Some people thought it was at the south end near where we park. That's nothing really there. If you go to Shiloh today and you go right off to the north end, past outside of the city walls, there's a little platform that they have some benches and it's covered. And most tour groups are told this is where the tabernacle stood because it's a large flat area on which the tabernacle would have sat. The problem with that theory, from my perspective, is it's outside the city walls. In the ancient world, the people kept their temple, their holy place, inside the city walls so it would be protected. And that's what you see here is this monumental structure. We're calling it a monumental structure. We have not yet declared it to be the tabernacle. We're saying that it's a great candidate for the tabernacle. There's a lot of things that are starting to make us think, this could be the tabernacle. One of them was the fact that we have found 3 horns of a 4-horned altar in this general vicinity around this structure. I think was it 20, I can't remember, 2018 maybe. A number of years ago, they found just outside in the northern area up here, a ceramic pomegranate. And pomegranates were hugely important to worship of many cultures, the Israelites included. You will recall that they had little pomegranates embroidered around the hem of the robe of the priests who served at Shiloh. And so that's really important as well. And some of you might be thinking, though, well, hold on, I thought the tabernacle was a tent. And now you're talking about a building. And that is true. Except that the Mishnah, the ancient Jewish writings, the Mishnah tell us that they built walls there and they put the tent over top of it at some point at Shiloh. And you get a picture of this in Scripture. It says in 1 Samuel, Eli the priest was sitting on a chair by the doorpost of the Lord's temple. There's some element of permanence that you get hinted at here, even in Scripture. And so we our working hypothesis is that we may have discovered the remains of this particular structure, and we're still trying to clarify some walls, particularly on the southeastern corner. And so we found something this year where we need to clarify that more next year. And we'll talk about some of our discoveries, one big one inside the area that we were digging in the first week. So here is our a picture of our grid that we are looking at. And again, you can see that line, the northern wall again, just for reference point. And again, just so you can see, there's the monumental structure. I'll go back and forth a couple of times so you can kind of see it. There it is. And that was the square that we dug in the very first week, AG 31. And we wanted to go right to the outer wall of the monumental structure. And so we kind of stole a little bit of AG 30 and talked to the square supervisor who was in charge of that. And he agreed to let us do that. And so this is where we dug. Essentially, if this is the tabernacle, this year we were digging in what would be the Holy of Holies of the tabernacle. And we were trying to figure out a number of things. One of the important questions that we have is, what in the world is this wall doing here, cutting it in half? Seems to have been built in the Iron Age. And we'll talk a little bit about what we were doing with that wall in a minute. Why don't I just share with you my working theory? This isn't our working theory. This is my working theory. My working theory is this, that at some point, they built a bedroom in the Holy of Holies. Now, you might think that sounds strange. Well, it does until you read the book of 1 Samuel. Because when God called to Samuel, where was Samuel sleeping? It says that he was in the tabernacle, in the place where the ark stood. And if you interpret that literally, what that means is that he slept in the Holy of Holies where the ark stood. That's where Samuel had his little bedroom. I don't know, just a working hypothesis for me at this point. And so we were working on that as we went. And so this is what our square looked like now. We're looking towards the west here, and we're looking at the walls. Here's that wall, by the way. Outer wall is back here, outer wall here, and there's that center wall. We call it Wall 54. And Jen and I had the opportunity to dig on one side of that wall. We were trying to figure things out. Now, one of the questions I always get when we come back is people say, did you find anything cool? And the answer is yes. We did find cool stuff. We didn't find cool stuff in this particular area, but we were doing other important stuff in this area. And I'm going to explain that really quickly. When we dig in area D, that's the area we find all the cool painted pottery. That's the area we find the gold. I have a friend, I won't name him. He might be watching tonight, so I won't name, but he calls us gold diggers. So you're just the gold diggers over there. You're finding all this gold. And it's true. We've found, I think, 6 pieces of gold now. There are many archaeologists who dig their entire careers, never find anything gold. And in our area, in 6 years, we found 6 pieces of gold. And so that's pretty cool. And there's something special about that particular area. Where we were digging here, we were doing other things. We were looking at the architecture. And so we're trying to figure out the architecture. When was it constructed? Can we tell from how it's constructed, from the limited pottery that we find there? And so while we were there, this is our square supervisor, Tim. Tim did a great job. I was an assistant square supervisor under him. They put me with Tim to learn, and I learned from the best. Tim did a great job of teaching me. This is the representative from the Israel Antiquities Authority. His name is Aaron, and you can see that Aaron is packing quite nicely. He had just come off his duty as a reservist, and so he had his machine gun with him every day, slung over his shoulder as he was wandering around, learning our site and our system there. And so this is what we did in Area H, in the Holy of Holies, we might say, if that is indeed the tabernacle. We did a lot of digging. for pottery and trying to figure things out. We're taking down not walls, but areas that we hadn't dug yet. So that when we got there, there was this trench through one area and we were trying to take it down and we were digging on the other side of the wall. We put all of our pottery in a bucket, pail, a pottery pail. If Scott's watching, I apologize. It's a pottery pail, not a bucket. Don't say bucket there. It's a pottery pail. You have to get that right. And then you put your rocks and your dirt in a goofa. You take your goofas of dirt, you put it in a dry sifter, and you sift it out, and you look and see what's left and see if there's anything that you can find, because sometimes you find things like scarabs still there. And then that gets dumped into this tray and into a little bag taken down to wet sift. And at wet sift, you see friendly people like this who are there to help, and they just spray dirt on it, because that rock that you think is a rock might actually be just a hard clump of dirt. And a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, when they went down there, they sprayed it and that clump of dirt dissolved and it turned out to be a gold star that was inside of it. And so that's one of the reasons that we do wet sifting. I'm just going to take a minute and brag about my wife just a little bit here. She's going to be horrified by this, but Jen found at wet sift, Jen does a great job at wet sift. She has fit in beautifully as part of the team, and it is just a real encouragement to see how she's fit in and appreciated and valued there. And she was the one day she found definitely the most important find of the first 2 weeks we were there. Our assistant dig director, who's our objects registrar, she let it be known that object number 3,000 from our dig, historically the 6 years, was coming up. And she was reserving that number for something good. So at the end of the week, she's got all these objects and she can put them in whatever order she wants. And she was saving 3,000 for something that was really good. And I can tell you what we found. I do have permission to tell you. I can't show you any pictures of it. And I'm not going to describe it here live because it's being taped. But wait until it's published, because it will be published. What Jen was able to find was a bulla. A bulla is a clay seal impression. And anytime you have a seal impression that has markings on it of any kind, that's hugely important. And so that was object number 3,000 for that week. And when we talked about it and celebrated that, right at the end of our second week, Scott, our dig director, said, in fact, Bryan, he said, you can go, but can you leave your wife here? We just want to keep her here. So he was joking, I think. We'll see. So we were digging. I'm going to show you what we do. This is the, everybody wants to know about the really exciting, cool things that are found. This is the important work that isn't so exciting to some. I find it exciting, but almost everybody finds gold exciting. Not as many people find this exciting. So let me tell you what you're looking at here. This is wall 54. This is the south side of wall 54 right here. There's your wall. And as we excavated down, here's what we discovered. Do you see that triangle? That is a triangle of mud brick that collapsed and fell down below the wall, we believe, which is why it created this angled red mud brick down. Now, this was important for us because it helped us to understand at least part of this wall. You can see right here that whoever built this part of the wall dug down into that red, because the red doesn't come down here. This is a different color. They dug down in here. It's called a foundation trench. And so by excavating all of these parts together, we were able to start to get a better idea of how this wall was constructed. The lower part was constructed at some point in the past. And then there was the way they built walls often at that point. They built a foundation wall out of stone, and then they would put mud brick on top of it. And the mud brick was not nearly as stable or strong. If you had a destruction, if you had an earthquake, it would come down. And when they were going to rebuild that wall again with a second phase, they dug down into it a foundation trench. And we know that because they dug right down into the part of the collapsed mud brick. And so really important for us, helpful for us. Not really exciting for a lot of other people. Tim and I were excited about this as we're here. Jen's digging with us too. We're just all excited about this, and other people not so much. But it's important for us to understand the different parts there. Maybe I'll just say this. We found a number of things. We found the original floor of this structure, which is really important because that helps us date the structure. They found that the week after we left. And they found, I teased people last week at Island Bible Chapel, I teased them that I would share a couple of big finds. And so here's the first big find that I'm allowed to tell you. They found in wet sifting, so material we had dug and we had dry sifted, didn't find it in the digging or the dry sifting, but went down to wet sift from inside this part of the monumental structure, the western room, what would be the Holy of Holies. They found a faience, which is a kind of a paste that would harden, that they would create different things out, a bead that is in the shape of a pomegranate. And so again, that's hugely important. We're now finding pomegranates inside what would be the Holy of Holies if this is indeed the tabernacle. And that's huge. In fact, I haven't seen a picture of it. I started looking up late Bronze Age pomegranate beads and faience, and I started finding some. So I sent it to Tim and said, is it kind of like this? And he said, yeah, it's kind of like that. I'm not sure if he's teasing me. Sometimes I have to wait until it's published too, but when it comes out. So that was one of the huge finds that they found the week after we left. One of the things that was really important for me this year was learning a whole new role. Last year, Jen and I were both there as volunteers, and that was great. Got to learn about digging and make some good friends. But this year, I got bumped up. I'm on dig staff now as an assistant square supervisor. I'm training under Tim to eventually, hopefully at some point, become a square supervisor. So that meant keeping a lot of journal notes. If you want to see what that looks like, I opened my journal, open down here, you can see. And I did a lot of work. Tim was very gracious and allowed me to do all of the iPad work, because everything that we find, all of our samples, all of our objects get registered in spreadsheets on iPads. And so I was the one who kept track of all of that as we went. So that was important. And there's our team week one, the three of us. Last year, the teams, they would have teams 8, 10, 12 people on a team. This year, they were much smaller. Last year, I heard Scott say just this past week on a video, he said last year we had over 200 volunteers in total. This year we had 75, and largely a result of the conflicts over there. There were a lot of people who were too nervous to come, and so they didn't. We had a smaller team, but we still got a lot of work done. And so Tim's just a wonderful guy, good friend now, and we had a great time working with him. And then the second week, we moved over to a different area. So off to the east, right out from the end of the entrance, what would be the entrance to the monumental building, if it's the tabernacle, is an area called Area D. And that is the area that we dug for the second part. Area D is what we call in archaeology a favisa. What that means is it's a burial pit for all of the stuff that they have sacrificed. So when they offered a sacrifice to the Lord, and there were multiple different kinds of sacrifices, some that were just burnt up totally on the altar, some of which only part of it was burnt up on the altar, and the priests got to have the right side of the animal, and the left side of the animal was given back to the offerer so that the person could take it and eat it. If you remember the story of Hannah and Elkanah, when Hannah was barren, Elkanah would give her a double portion of the offering. That's a fellowship offering, probably a goat. And so they would then bury the bones here. If they offered something in a like a grain offering in a bowl, they would then break the bowl. It was holy to the Lord. You couldn't desecrate it by taking it back to your house to make your dinner in it. They would break it and they would bury that. In this particular area is where we are finding all of the pieces of gold too. And so we believe that these are precious things that they are offering to the Lord. Now, I have a very interesting theory myself. Last year when I was there, we actually found a piece of gold right there, right under my nose. Our metal detectorist came. I was wishing afterwards she had come about 20 minutes later because it was just down just a little bit from where I was digging. But we found this beautiful little spoon or scoop shaped pendant. And when I got home, I did a little research on it and I thought, I was reading that story of the Exodus when they left Egypt. One of those little verses you skip over all the time. It says that the women asked the Egyptian women for their gold and silver jewelry, and so they plundered the Egyptians. And I thought, I wonder what Egyptian women wore for jewelry during the New Kingdom period in the late Bronze Age, because that's the period we believe the Exodus happened. And I started doing research, and wouldn't you know, they happened to wear these broad necklaces with lots of different strings of all of these little pendants, gold pendants and stone pendants. And so my working theory is that at least some of this gold that we are finding in here may have been part of a Egyptian necklace at one point that they plundered from the Egyptians and came, and at some point are offering, a next generation is offering a piece of it to the Lord. Our job here in Area D was to take down these two bulks. I'll just kind of do that back and forth so you can see it a little bit. These are the remains of the walls of squares. It doesn't look like much now because we've excavated a bunch of them over the last couple of years. And this is what it looks like as we were working on it. As we go, you can kind of see this little circular thing filled with sandbags. Those are Iron Age silos. So we are excavating late Bronze Age, so 1400 BC, 1300 BC-ish stuff. We know that from the pottery that's there. Later on in the Iron Age, people come by and they want to dig these silos that they can store their grain in. So they just found an area, this area, started digging all these silos. So we have all these silos all over the place. And we have told them that we will keep as many of them as we can. And so you fill them with a sandbag and then you're taking the bulk down behind it. That was what we were doing. If I go back a picture, you can see there's that silo there that I just pointed out. You've got another one here and here and here and here. They're all over the place in Area D. And so this was our team week number 2. This is my buddy Jordan, and Jordan's our square supervisor. And Dan was officially the assistant square supervisor the second week. I was the unofficial one. I was bringing some of my training from Tim and helping Dan out there as we worked together. In week 2, Jen got to do a lot of work down at the wet sift station, and that is her happy place. And she gets to go down there, and she's to the point where Frankie, who runs it, is allowing her to train people. And Frankie usually only wet sifts the stuff from Area D herself because it's really important stuff, and she's been letting Jen do that too. So that's good. This is that's me. Again, in my happy spot, doing just digging. We're just scraping stuff off. And people who watch Indiana Jones think that's archaeology. And I think, no, not really. If your idea of a good time is on your knees, scraping for 8 hours a day, occasionally getting up, carrying goofies of dirt, and then dropping it in and sifting and getting all dusty. If you love if that thing, just it makes you excited and makes your heart beat, then archaeology is for you. Now, that's not to say I don't think Indiana Jones, some of them anyways, are good movies. And I'm sure they've had some sort of an impetus in some of us liking archaeology, but it is a far more laborious, some would say boring process, not me. So here's the question. People say, what did you find? All right, so here's what we found. Let's see if I can get a good picture of it. There it is. That is thousands upon thousands upon thousands of pottery sherds. And that's the discard pile. That's the big pile of stuff. They just, at the end, when they go take them all down, they choose the ones they're going to keep. They throw everything else. And it's this massive pile. And so we found all sorts of pottery. Now, they keep the good pottery. And because we're in Area D, this is what the pottery in Area D looks like. This is painted pottery from the late Bronze Age that we found, and all of it, when we got down to wet sift, when we threw this in the pottery pail, we didn't see any paint on it. It was just covered with dirt. And then you take it down and you scrub it very gently, because if you scrub too hard, the paint comes off and you don't want that. And so you can see just beautiful, beautiful pieces of late Bronze Age pottery, which helps date that particular time for us. We also found a number of other things in Area D. This is a spearhead. There was a debate, is that an arrowhead or a spearhead? It's far too big to be an arrowhead, likely a spearhead. These are bones. We have found thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands of animal bones. Interestingly, when the Israelis dug in the 1980s, they noted that 2/3 of the animal bones were from the right side of the body. They didn't do anything with that piece of information other than note it. And we've come along and gone, oh, well, isn't that interesting? The priest portion was the right side of the body. And so we would expect to find more from the right side than the left side, which was given back to the people to eat out on the hills. We found you find all sorts of broken pottery sherds. It is very rare to find an intact vessel, and we found an intact vessel. Dan ended up digging in this beautiful, right at the end, had some great stuff in it, and one of it was this small piriform juglet. The part that we probably really wanted, the neck, was gone. But it was really exciting to find that. They've emptied it. They're going to do residue analysis to see if we can find what was inside of it. So they're going to do some chemical testing on that. Here is another part. Like I said, Dan just had a great spot to dig, and we found these bases of these beautiful, these are called trumpet-based or pedestal-based bowls. This is what it probably would have looked like, or at least part of it. And all in the same area, right in this area. And these are not your common ware. These are really fancy pieces of pottery. And so not surprising that that's the pottery that they're using to make the offering to the Lord. After Dan moved out, I went down and dug a little bit. I found a couple of bases of chalices. So chalice is like a trumpet-based bowl, only it's a little taller, with a bowl part at top. These are always used in worship. And whenever you find a chalice, you know it's a worship context. That's just almost universally acknowledged in the ancient Near East. And so finding chalice bases in this area is very important for us, because we know now that we're in an area that is almost certainly of a favisa. It's where they buried their worship pottery. Couple of other things. These are two other things that I found. One is the sling stone that was there. And then this little piece of ceramic is about this big and had a hole in it. And then the big debate started. Well, what is it? If it was stone, it would have been a loom weight. But it's not. It's ceramic. It's pottery. So it's not as heavy as a stone. So it's not heavy enough to be a loom weight. And then they said, well, it's a stopper. Well, they would use these rounded pieces of pottery to put on the top of a juglet to keep, well, okay, but it's got a hole in it. Well, okay, maybe not. They said maybe it's a jug that held wine, and the wine has to breathe. Maybe that's what it's there. In the end, they called it a spindle whirl, is what they called it. I think is how they objectified that particular one. And so those are the things that we were finding in Area D. And then Jen found this from Area D. This is a piece of bone that has been inscribed with circles, a very common motif. As soon as we saw it, we knew exactly what it was. This is the kind of thing that would have been inlaid in, say, the handle of a fancy knife. That would have been put inlaid into things. And so that was really important. Now, I did say that I would share something cool that they found in Area D. And so the week after we left, we returned, and my friend Jordan sent me a Facebook message, and he says, we found another piece of gold. And I thought that was all I was going to be able to tell you. Because about a couple of weeks ago, Jordan messaged me and he said, "You will never guess what was on that piece of gold." And I thought, oh man. So when he told me, I couldn't believe it. That's great, except I'm not going to be able to tell anyone. I'm only going to be able to say they found a piece of gold. And then on Friday, I watched a video where Scott described what was on the gold. And so I messaged him right away and I said, "Hey, can I tell too?" And he said, yes. So it was a flat gold leaf, probably about the size of a nickel, but maybe oblong, not so much circular. And on it, when they cleaned it, was inscribed the face of a man. Unbelievable to see this. Now, this will be coming out almost certainly soon. The picture of the scoop pendant we found last year is about to be published. Jordan and Frankie are in fact, I've seen a preview copy of the article. And then they find this. And so I said to Jordan, "Can you get that in the article?" And he said, "Yeah, we're going to try and get that in the article." So hopefully very soon, all of this will come out and then I can actually show pictures of it. But that is really exciting when you're seeing things like that, because everybody's like, "Well, what, my goodness, what does that mean?" And I mean, it's scary, realistic looking face. It's pretty impressive. So that's all I can say about that. I wish it's all I can say. This is our team. This is our team week one, about 30 of us or so. And you can see a couple of smiling people right there in the back. And so we get together every week for a picture. And then at the end of every day, we get on the bus for our ride home. And we're tired, but it was just a great trip. Now, one of the things about being over in Israel is that we also have the opportunity to do a little bit of touring. And so in the evenings, we could take a quick walk into town. It was a little different this year because normally the evening presentations were after supper. So we had a good 3 hours to go into the old city and wander around. It was wonderful. We could go to the Damascus Gate and it was great. This year, they moved the presentation before supper and our hotel was farther away. So we didn't really have a lot of time. One day, my friend Gary and I decided we were going to hoof it down and hoof it back and try and make it back in time. And I think we might have set a record, and we were both drenched in sweat when we got back and thought, no, we're not doing that again. We wanted to get down to see an antiquities store in the old city. So we hoofed it down and hoofed it back. By the way, I should say, I did have the people at Island Bible Chapel here praying. I was asked to do a presentation on Jericho, my research on Jericho for my master's thesis. It's controversial, and I'm happy to say that nobody tarred and feathered me there or disowned me. And so they were very gracious. I don't know that everybody agrees with my take, but it's the first time they've heard it, and it'll probably take some time for them to do it. Maybe someday I'll talk about it because it was pretty cool, some of the things that happened. I'll tell one, literally, I'm going to be presenting at 5:30, and we got back and I ran to the Albright Institute, which has this massive library of every book you could ever think of that's from an excavation. And so I wanted to get a bunch of books and take some pictures before, and then I was going to run back and do my presentation. I'm sitting down there and the lady came in. She goes, "Is there anything else I can help you with?" I said, I would love to know if Lorenzo Negro, the current guy who is excavating there, has published anything on Jericho. Like, I've found all of us, but I haven't found anything. And then this hand goes up on this little booth on the other side. And the curator there says, "Well, you need to talk to her." And so she stood up and introduced, she dug at Jericho with Lorenzo Negro. And I said, "Well, can I show you this picture? Because there's this piece of pottery I'm really interested in." She looks at the picture. She goes, "That's my hand." She says, "I'm holding it in that picture." So I'm able to, this is literally an hour before I'm presenting, able to talk. So it's pretty neat, some of the things that happened. So we got to go into the old city. We got to, every year we go, I have a list of things I want to see. This was on my list this year that I didn't get to see last year in the Jewish quarter. This is a gigantic golden menorah that the Temple Institute has built. The Temple Institute is ready. Their goal is to see a third temple built in Jerusalem, a third Jewish temple, and it will be built on the Temple Mount. I have no idea how that's going to happen, because if you know anything about the Temple Mount, you know that currently there is an Islamic mosque, an Islamic shrine there. And so, but that's where the temple has to be. You might read things on blogs about the temple was in a different area and people have made a mistake. There is no mistake. Every archaeologist knows that's where the temple was, and that's where it will be again. I don't know how it's going to do, but the Temple Mount is all ready to go with all of the implements. They've got the priests in training. While we were at Shiloh, where we were, they have 4 red heifers because the ashes of a red heifer are what have to purify the temple when it gets going again. And so we got to go into town and see those. On the weekend, we got to see we went on 2 tours. We were there over 2 weekends. One of them, we went up to Galilee. We got to go for a boat ride on the Sea of Galilee. We got to see the synagogue at Magdala. The Bible says that Jesus went throughout Galilee teaching in all of their synagogues, and this is a synagogue that dates to the time of Jesus. Almost certainly Jesus was here teaching in this particular synagogue. We went to Capernaum. This is the remains of the 4th century, probably, synagogue, but it's built upon the foundation of the 1st century synagogue where Jesus taught. And we went to this amazing city. This isn't my photo, but my photos don't capture it. It's 350 feet above the Sea of Galilee on the spur of this mountain. It's called Hippos. Hippos in Greek means horse. Potame means river. So a hippopotamus is a river horse. There you go. Now you're getting your Greek on. That's good. And so we're on this beautiful, we went and just beautiful, beautiful remains there. So that was the tour the first week. The second week, we went on a tour down the Jordan Valley area. We went to Qumran. That's where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. And if you look right up here, you can see one of the Dead Sea Scroll caves. And there was a group of people with all of their rappelling harnesses that were on their way up when we were going there. We went to Old Testament Jericho again. We went to New Testament Jericho again, and that's me standing in Herod the Great's bathhouse at New Testament Jericho. And so we went there, and then we got to swim in the Dead Sea. So we did get out on a weekend and relax and see some parts of Israel that were there. And so I want to give a time here for questions, but before I do that, I just want to say thank you, because there were lots of people who supported us in churches too. And so if you're watching and you just thank you so much. And thank you for those of you who were praying for us as we went. Yeah, so I'll open it up for questions at this point. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Susan.
Bryan, just picturing your day. How long was the ride from the hotel to the day?
So about 40 minutes there and back. So about 40 minutes in the morning. Those of us who are here, we know some people who live over in that area. And as we were driving one morning, we were able to see the towers of Amman, Jordan, off in the distance across the river. And so that was pretty exciting. We always keep an eye. A bunch of our people have dug there. Dug over in Jordan, and so and have stayed in that area, and so just kind of neat to be able to see that on the horizon as you're driving. Pretty exciting. Yes. That is a good question. So first of all, when you do an excavation, you're supposed to publish your final excavation report within 5 years of your excavation ending. So one of the reasons that it takes so long is that, so we're on our 6th year of our dig. So even if we stopped, even if this was last year, we would still have 5 years to publish. And it takes that long to get all of the data together. We would find 1,000, 1,500 pieces of pottery a day, maybe. And so all of that is sifted through, and then the stuff you're going to keep, you have to You have to photograph it and you have to research it and you have to publish it. So in the meantime, there are articles being published. Our group we take that very seriously. We finished our previous dig at Kerbadel McCatter and we hit the 5-year publication deadline bang on the nose with our things. Some people, and I won't tell you who they are, but there are people who have dug over there. I'm just completely frustrated because I want to get at their data and they haven't published in years. In fact, sometimes they die before they've published their stuff. And that's horrible because archaeology is a destructive science. We essentially destroy things as we go down. Over top of the monumental building, there were Roman walls. We dismantled those. We documented them. We put all the data, we'll publish that. And then we get down to the next layer. It's a destructive science. And if you don't publish, you've just destroyed something. And it's, yeah. So it takes a long time. Part of it is laziness on the part of some people, or maybe not lazy. That's not fair. Some people are too busy doing so many other things that they don't get the work done they're supposed to get done. Sometimes it's because the excavation is ongoing and you have a 5-year window to get that done. But our group tends to publish stuff. So you can find publications on the ceramic pomegranate that we've done. A publication just recently on the scarabs from Shiloh. Coming out soon will be the publication on the gold from Shiloh or Shiloh. And so all of that is there. But yeah, it's frustrating. It is. Amanda. Okay, that's a good question. So our squares are 5 meters by 5 meters with a 1 meter bulk on the north and the east side. So essentially you're digging in a 4 meter by 4 meter hole. And then when all of those squares are together, if you looked at it, all the grids would be a 1 meter bulk or a wall. But we're in a 4 meter by 4 meter hole. So, yeah. No, that's a good question. So our team digs for 4 weeks a year. And then there's a final week that's a conservation week. So when we expose a wall, there's some conservation we do to make sure that wall is going to stay standing and be safe. There are 2 other groups that have dug at Shiloh at different times as well, at different areas of Shiloh. But no, generally there's the excavation season in Israel tends to be kind of that early summer. Some go into summer. I know one group that does a fall dig too. So, but it's part of it is archaeologists. I don't know of any archaeologists that just make their living doing archaeology. It's not how you make a living. You have a day job, and many of the archaeologists teach. So they teach at universities. So from September to April, they're teaching. And then they have that summer window from like May, June, July, August. That's all they have to dig. And so that's when their dig happens. Yeah. Kayla. That's a good question. We did not see, that's not true. So we weren't anywhere near where the war is going on. That's down near Gaza. And so we did see an increased military presence along the road and at the checkpoints. Obviously, Ahron had his gun with him, but no. Other than that, we didn't. The only other, I guess, maybe there is there's a lack of tourists. So because of the war, so that's hugely obvious. So we see things like that. There is a tension that is there, but that would be it. What are you saying, honey? Yeah. Yeah.
Each individual hostage has their picture and their family has set up their notes or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. Thank you. Yeah, for those online, when you hit the airport, lining the main concourse are all of these posters, a poster for every hostage that is still in captivity by Hamas. bring them home, a picture for every single one of them that's still there. And so that's as soon as you hit there, a sobering reminder of that. So yeah. I think the last count I heard was 116 still in being held hostage. Jen?
Not sure if that's what.
Sure. So we know that the pomegranate was a symbol that was used in worship all through the Middle East. And we know from scripture that it was used specifically with Israelite worship. Later at the temple, it's actually on the temple. There are pomegranates engraved on the temple, and in the tabernacle, the priests had, now I went back to check because I wanted to see whether the pomegranates on the hem of the robe were beads or not, and they are not. In scripture, it's clear that they're made out of the threads. So they were, I don't know, some kind of crochet or macrame or whatever they did. I don't know. But that's hugely important. So we know that they're associated with Israelite worship. And now we have a structure, and the most holy part of the structure, if this is the tabernacle, that has one of the symbols of Israelite worship that has been found inside of it. And so that's pretty excited. And again, we go, well, you found one bead with a pomegranate. Yep, that's what we found. But you start putting all the pieces together. We also found a ceramic pomegranate just outside the structure, and we found 3 horns of a 4-horned altar, and it's the same dimensions as the tabernacle, and it faces east-west, and it has a wall 1/3 exactly where you would expect to find it. And so all these things you start adding up over and over again, and you start to build a compelling case, so that at some point, if we officially say we have found the tabernacle, we have all of the evidence ready to go and backed up. James?
In your illustration of it seemed pretty evident on the left, like that square and the Holy of Holies, but you said that it was tricky to find like the sort of the bottom right. It's largely vacant. Why would it be clear on the one side and the other side?
It's a good question.
Mine was almost like that, the bottom.
Yeah.
But the rest of it looked pretty convincing.
Yeah, so there's 2 answers to that question. I would answer. The first is where the southern wall would be. You can't tell when you're looking straight down, but when you're standing looking at it, you're basically looking at the face of a cliff, so to speak. And so we have found a little piece of that wall down at the bottom, and we think they probably used part of the face of that wall perhaps as part of the wall as well, and maybe built part of the wall up against it, and we found a little bit of the bottom. So we have the southwestern corner for sure of that wall. And then where the other end, where you can't really see anything of it, that's a big pile of dirt that comes down. And this year they just started excavating that, and it was pretty impressive to see. See if I can give an example. If you're maybe to the top of the TV here, is from the top to the bottom is the hill, and so you got to come down from that level down to this level. And so they're building, and you have to be careful, because if you just start digging into dirt, you're just going to have collapses there. So we are working on that. We haven't found it yet. And as Scott, our director, says, just keep working the system. Just keep working the system. We'll come back next year. We'll keep digging. We didn't find it where we thought we were going to find it last year. And so we've readjusted a little bit, and they found something. I checked with one of my friends who was a square supervisor in that area, and he said they found something, but didn't get enough. They just hit it just near the end. So we got to go back and do a little bit more work there. Yes.
Well, is there any relation to the side? Because Simon, he creating portions and then the super.
Yes. The short answer is almost certainly yes. Hippos was the name of the town, and every Roman town would have multiple temples because the Romans believed in multiple gods. And I would bet, don't think I saw it there. We didn't have a lot of time at Hippos, but I would bet large sums of money that there is a temple there to Poseidon. I'd be shocked if there wasn't exactly for the reason that you said. So, yeah. Any other questions? It's exciting. First of all, yeah, you get there and you have to, there's a lot of work to do. And so you have to take time to savor what you're doing in those moments when you just kind of, you have a break and you sit there and you look around and you go, wow. Last year, for example, I dug I was in the western room of the monumental building. I was on the eastern end last year digging in the northeastern corner. And I took time to actually read the story of Eli sitting at the doorposts of the temple. And I actually paced out where I thought it was. And we actually found a socket stone by the entrance there. The second week, a different team did. And so I would read right there where, if this is the spot, if this was the tabernacle where this event happened. And it was pretty neat to read about that. We, on the boat ride on the Sea of Galilee, they're showing us how they would have fished with their nets in ancient times. And so it just brings everything to life. It feels hot quite often. There's a lot of sweating that you're doing, and you're constantly. This is one of the things I love this year about being on dig staff is you get a lot of the inside stuff, and so Tim and I are talking, and I don't know how many different theories we went through. Well, it could be this. What about this for the wall? And so there's a lot of that going on. So there's a lot of kind of the archaeological stuff, but when you step back and you take your moment to savor it, it's pretty powerful to be standing there. I did a devotional. On the bus every morning, a different person would do a devotional, and the devotional that I did the one morning was just a reflection on the fact that we're priests. We offer sacrifice of praise, and we're at this place where the priests of old used to offer sacrifices to, and that's pretty exciting. Yeah.
On a similar note, like we know, well, when Jesus died, the temple curtain was torn in two, which symbolized the new covenant. So you didn't have to go to the temple to worship, and then further writers explain that we are temples, like our bodies are temples of the Lord to worship Him. And so, but in the Old Testament, you did have your Holy of Holies, like a place where people would die if they went into it appropriately. So that isn't the case anymore, I suppose, because we're temples, but is there still sort of the idea that you would have been in the Holy of Holies where it was at a certain point? Does that still, even with the new covenant, kind of put the hair up on the back of your head? Or fearful?
I wouldn't say fearful because, and I'll say why. Jeremiah the prophet said to God's people who at that time they were being disobedient, and God said to them, "Go now to Shiloh, see what I did there when they disobeyed me." Take note. And so we go to Shiloh now, and we are digging in this area. We're digging in the Holy of Holies, but that's a place that God, for a period of time, caused His name to dwell. And then because the people were wicked, He withdrew that and allowed it to be demolished. And so I don't have that fear of being in there, and if I push a stone the wrong way, I'm going to get smited or something like that. I don't have that. But there is this, we often talk about it being, sacred ground in a sense. I mean, we're at the spot where God caused His name to dwell, and that ought to fill us with awe and wonder. So it's kind of a yes and no answer
Yeah.
to the question. Yeah.
Oh, who protects the dig when the dig is done? Who protects the site, then the rest of it?
Yeah, so who protects the site the rest of the year? So where we are right now, we're really fortunate because the last site that we dug at, there was not a lot of protection. And so when we left, you come back the next year and who knows what you'd be finding. And in many sites, what we call the night diggers come out because they're looking, there are rumors of gold and there are rumors of this and they're digging, or looters are there trying to find stuff to sell on the black market for antiquities and stuff. Where we are at Shiloh, we're a really fortunate area. First of all, it's gated. And the ancient site of Shiloh is protected by the modern village of Shiloh. It's one of those settlements you hear about in the West Bank, although this is in Area C, so it's in an area, it's okay. And so they protect it. And so to the point where you just pack your stuff up at the end of the day and you can leave your tools there and you're going to find them when you get back. So, yeah. Go ahead, honey. Did you have?
Throughout the year, there are tour groups coming in, so it's well populated throughout the year and throughout the year. As it is the tourist site.
That's
Run
right.
by the modern town, right?
Yes, run by the modern town. So yeah, so that just Jen's just saying for those online that it's a tourist site too. They have a beautiful tourist information center there. Right at the top, you see that gigantic spaceship looking circle thing. They have a movie theater inside there where they have a movie they showed, a dramatic reconstruction of the time of Shiloh, the history of Shiloh, ancient history of it. And so yeah, people are there regularly. It's not one of the stops that a lot of tours make, and which is really disappointing. You really should, if you go on a tour, put the plug in to stop at Shiloh because it's a fantastic site to see. So yeah, there are tour groups that come, but it's not like Galilee where every tour group goes to Galilee. Shiloh's not like that. So. Sharon.
Just curious, you said like you destroy the Roman to get, do you do it with care or you just go like the bulldozer?
Yeah, oh, definitely with care. Yes. Yeah. No bulldozers allowed at all. You do it with care because you want to be, you never know whether you're going to be, how many phases to that wall were there. And so you want to be working carefully to take it, to remove stuff. Plus you tend to have groups of people there and sometimes it's pretty deep the other side of the wall. And so you want to be careful as you're doing it. Yeah. It's all done by hand. You're taking it down by hand often. What's that?
Finding good stuff.
Well, you do find good stuff. In fact, you can still see it. One of the altar horns at Shiloh was found in secondary use in a wall. And so you're pulling out these stones, you have to be careful because, hey, there's, could be something. One of the most famous artifacts in all of Israel is the Tel Dan stela found at Tel Dan. And it was found, it was either, I've heard two stories and I'm not sure which one it is. It was either in a paving stone or it was in a wall. And when they pulled it out, they found out that it had an inscription on it. And the inscription talked about the house of David. So hugely important. So yeah, you want to be careful as you're pulling stuff out to make sure that you're doing that carefully.
Document all as you bring the bathtub of sand, you document everything. Look behind you, see what was there. You're leaving a little written record.
Yeah. Yeah. Amanda.
Need to find, or what are we find? What would it take to know that this where you were excavating was
Yeah. So we joked about, I joked that the one side of the wall was Eli's bedroom is my own. And so if we found Eli's name scrawled on the wall, that would be pretty exciting. That would be, although in Hebrew it's pronounced Eli, not Eli. And so You know what, if we found the clearly articulated southern wall, the southeastern corner, and we could get that whole building articulated, that would be very helpful. And if we can date the walls. So I think those, and if we keep finding things related to worship in it, I think that would be probably, so the final clarification of the southern wall and the southeastern wall in particular, that we can clearly date. And then here's a question: how do you date a wall? Well, the foundation trench that they dig in, oftentimes you find they'll kind of level it out and they'll use pieces of pottery in it. And so when you dig the foundation trench, you find pieces of pottery and you can date the pottery. So if the pottery dates to Iron Age 1, you know that the wall came after that. So if we could find and date all of the structure to late Bronze Age 2, Iron Age 1, if it dates to the time the tabernacle was there and we can get a clear read of it and we find some more worship related things, that would probably be enough, I think. Certainly enough to make a good case. And then not everybody, anytime you make a case for something in biblical archaeology that aligns with the Bible, you have the other side, the people who think the Bible is not reliable and least, who will criticize you for everything. Which is one of the reasons ABR makes sure that we dot every I, cross every T, because we know that people are going to criticize us as soon as we say, hey, this aligns with what the Bible says. So. Yeah.
When you're working on the wall, right, you tear the wall down, or you try to leave it so that, you know, people can see the physical structure of the building.
Yeah, for the most part, because we're now at the main structure. So the Romans built on top of this structure. So we removed that and now we're building, and in fact, the Romans built across it, but they also built on top of the walls. So we took that down. Now we're at the Iron Age, maybe the late Bronze Age. We're still clarifying the original date of its construction. Those walls are all in place. And so, yeah, and we've left them there. We conserve them there. We get down to the floor to try and see where that is. And especially if this is the tabernacle, that's a hugely important structure. So we're going to want to get that all clarified and leave that so that people can see it. I don't know that they would rebuild it. We do if we conserve things, and so we don't rebuild it per se, but you know, they have this special like caulking glue concoction that they make that they once we take the dirt down from along the side of the wall and we expose the wall now, if it's the cracks are in the stones, between the stones, we'll put some of this in to keep it secure. We have one of the best conservationists in all of Israel, Orna Cohen, who comes out and helps. Last year I got to work with her for a day and it was pretty exciting and cool. So yeah. Kayla. Yeah. Well, so in different sites, like people did live there over certain years, but sometimes places migrated from one hill to the next. So there are places like that. Shiloh, like many sites in Israel, doesn't have a water source right there. Most water sources for ancient towns in Israel were within a mile or 2 miles. You would walk to get your water and come back. And so, so not hugely surprising that it wasn't resettled, so to speak. I mean, through the ancient world, they would build city on top of city on top of city on top of city, which is why you've got the Roman, which is on top of the Iron Age, which is on top of the late Bronze Age, which is on top of the Middle Bronze Age. But in the modern context, they tend to, well, even in the modern world, they build on top of things, which is why you can't, I mean, there are places in Jerusalem you can't dig because the modern world is on top of it. And the world of Jesus, if you didn't know, is about 15 feet below the modern street level of Jerusalem, 10 to 15 feet below it. So, yeah, they just, right now they have a modern kind of city on the hill next over. You can kind of see it. Well, I'd be happy to stay and answer any more questions you have. A couple of resources for you. There are free resources at biblearchaeology.org. That's ABR's website. If you go to the tab up here at the top, you can find the breaking news section. That's my little part of the website. I do an update every week or two, and I put that there to stay up to date on all of the breaking news in the world of biblical archaeology. And then this is my website, biblearchaeologyreport.com. If you can't spell archaeology, and it took me a long time to do that, and you know how to spell my name, you can just type in bryanwindle.com. It goes to the same site as well. And so those are lots of free resources there. I have a display table set up for ABR over here. There are some brochures on this end of the table that you can take. If you want to sign your name, you can get our monthly e-newsletter for free as well. And on the far side are Bible and Spade magazines that are for sale for $5 each. You can just put money in the little clear bucket there and take one of those if you would like. And then in front of me here, we have just a display from Shiloh. I've got some specimen pottery and other things here in the middle. That's not for taking. That's just for there. You can look at. Feel free to pick it up carefully if you want. But over on the end here, I have a little basket of free pottery that's about 2,000 years old from Shiloh. You can take a piece if you would like to for that. And I'll stay at the front and answer any questions that you have. If you want to grab a snack or another coffee at the back, feel free to do so. And I would say again, thank you so much for coming. And thanks to those of you who supported us and prayed for us while we were gone. God bless.